I was 10 miles into this run. I was tired. I was fatigued. I didn't feel like running. I start walking back to our house. If I quit on this run right now, what does it say about my character? What does it say about me? What does it say about my future? So I stop. I go back to the trail. I finish the run. I ran 18 miles, ran one additional mile just to prove to myself that I could. Took my hat off, wrote one more on the bill of the hat, posted on social media, and it went nuts. It resonated. Just that mindset of one more. If you spend one more hour in your business, that will lead you to greater success. If you spend one more hour in the gym, that will lead to greater muscle gain. If you run one more mile, you'll build more endurance. Make very intentional choices because there's so much power in our decision making. Life is about being this selfless servant to others. And when you realize that, that brings another level of perspective and satisfaction and fulfillment. Money can't touch it.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. Our guest today is Nick Bare. And Nick is a former U.S. Army Ranger officer. He's an ultramarathoner, nutrition specialist, author, and the founder and former CEO of Bare Performance Nutrition. We're going to be diving deep into actionable insights and powerful strategies that can genuinely enhance your life. So whether you're looking to optimize your health, boost your productivity, or simply find new ways to achieve balance in your daily routine, this conversation will not only leave you inspired, but equipped. Nick gets real about discipline, resilience, and his go one more philosophy that he's built his life around. You'll walk away with powerful strategies, whether you're growing your personal brand, overcoming adversity, or reaching for a new fitness goal. Nick's experience offers tangible takeaways. So get ready to learn, be challenged, and gain valuable tools that help you live better every day. Welcome to the Gabby Reece Show. Let's go. Nick Bare, welcome to the show. And, in doing research, I always love to think about what the person's going through. Cause, a lot of time the research is based on what you've gone through. So you're going to share with us your story about, sort of how you put all these programming together and are, where you are. But I started really thinking, man, this guy has been packing in so many dimensions of life, not only starting in 2018, but then you got married in 20 and you've had 2 kids. It's like, and it makes me wonder not only about the high performance side, but just how are you navigating sort of all these roles from, creating businesses that are growing and being married. Like, how is that feeling for you?
To be honest, it feels fairly comfortable. And the only way to describe it is, I've been building my personal brand in my career, my business since 2012. And in 2012, if you would have given me the same amount of responsibility and management then that I have now, I for sure would have been overwhelmed and crumbled. But I believe over these last, 13-ish years, you just become a little bit more comfortable with handling more over time. And as my responsibilities have increased with business and my training goals and being a content creator and then becoming a husband and now father to 2 young kids, I have gotten really efficient and effective at time management. I believe it's one of my greatest skills. It by no means makes things easy, but I've just learned how to manage these big things going on in my life. But part of that is saying no to a lot of things as well and making sacrifices so I can prioritize the things that matter to me right now.
Yeah, I think people don't realize it. It's like, it's okay to have seasons and to sort of move things closer in and sort of other things further out. And in time, maybe other things will kind of come back into focus. It actually leads me to try to understand because how you protect your training world, because for a lot of people, and especially let's say busy women, I think usually the first thing, and it's almost like they're happy to let it go. It's like an excuse like, oh, I'm too busy. I don't have time. But this idea of holding your own real estate when you are all these roles, right? You have all these titles. I'm just curious because now you do have a family, how in the last 5 years, what have you learned about yourself and what techniques have you learned to actually hold that real estate besides justifying that it's your business? Because in one way that's a luxury, right? Like you can be like, well, I kind of have to do this because it's my business. Dad's going to work.
Correct.
But just from like your energy, your wattage, what's your techniques that you've had to develop to protect that space?
I mean, I've definitely had to make changes to my routines over the last couple of years. One of the things I've learned is that there's a difference between prioritizing your responsibilities versus prioritizing your routines. And before I had kids, my routine was my routine. And I wasn't breaking that routine for anything or anyone. And I had a rude awakening when my daughter was born. And then when my son was born, realizing that I have to be able to flex these routines and learning that it's more important to prioritize responsibilities and have routines that are adaptable. Now, if I look back at when I was training for Ironmans in 2019, training 3+ hours a day, that right now in this season of my life just is not realistic. With a business that I'm running, a team that I'm leading, I want to be a good husband. I want to be a very good father right now. And people ask me all the time, when are you going to train for another Ironman? Well, that time will come, but right now is not that time. But like my fitness and my training and my health and wellness, that does occupy a lot of real estate in my life. Maybe not as much time as it used to, but it's extremely important to me because it allows me to show up for these responsibilities, feeling really strong, feeling really fresh. And I think a good example of that is like my morning run. My morning run right now, it's 8 miles in the morning. It takes an hour. And that time for me is my time. It is before my kids are up. It's before my wife is really up. I have no distractions. I don't have my phone. I don't have emails pinging. I need that 1 hour in the morning for me. And that's where I do some of my best thinking. If there's a problem in my life that I'm trying to navigate, it finds me during that run. That is my solitude. That's where I listen to my audiobooks, my podcasts. And like, I really do need that for myself. And it's so much more of a physical adaptation that I'm working for and developing, but also just this mental stimulation that I don't get at any other part of my day. So I do that because it does matter to me and I need it.
Yeah. And I know you live in Texas, and this is just like a practical question. My husband gets up really early, and I always think I'm offended if it's dark outside. Like for me personally, I would like to at least be in my bed until the sun's sort of coming up, because there's something about the dark for me where I think, and unless of course you have small children, you just think we should be in bed. But I've been with him for almost 30 years, and it's like, oh yeah, dark. It's so quiet. I get to see the sun come up. But I'm curious, you live in Texas where it can be cooler and it can be really brutally hot. And I'm just wondering, do you have to dig in different sides of your personality when the temperature's on any one of those extremes?
No, at this point, like this morning is a good example. I woke up and it was thundering and lightning and it was pouring. And I knew I was going out for my run regardless, because I know I'm going to feel better throughout the day after that. So my alarm clock goes off 4:30 a.m. every morning. And I have a routine. I wake up, I go into the kitchen, I take my fuel for my run. And then I go and I give my son a bottle. I give him an 8-ounce bottle. I wake him up, I put him back down, because I know if I do that, he's asleep for another 3 hours. So it buys us 3 hours of time. And I go do my run. I come back, eat breakfast. My daughter's waking up at that point. But I would rather it be 100+ degrees running than cold. But I'm going to be doing that regardless of the season, the time of the year. We lived in Nashville for a period of time in 2023. And that was some of the colder weather that I've seen in the last couple of years. And still every morning, whether there was snow on the ground or not, I was out there running, because that truly sets the foundation for my day. And I believe it allows me to show up as a better partner, a better father, a better leader of the business. I personally believe like I need that to really start my day off strong. But the weather, the elements, they do not guide the trajectory of those decisions.
Yeah. I'm just curious, and I'm not putting you on eggshells with this question. This is like a genuine question.
Yeah.
Where you have coaching, you coach women as well. And I find that female athletes a lot of times have had to develop that objectivity that you're talking about, that you approach your training or getting up in the morning. Cause it's sort of that you almost put how you feel, and I put it in quotes, aside, and you go, no, this is what I'm doing. This is the plan. I know on the other side of this how I'm going to feel, and you just power through it. I'm just curious if you have somebody who's already an adult, a female, maybe she doesn't really have a true athletic background, even though I would think a lot of the people who come to you and do your programs and do a lot of your events probably have an athletic background. Is there a way that you have coached men or women, but certainly women who aren't taught that kind of approach to it, to this type of activity, how to dial into this is just how you get it done?
One of my favorite quotes, that's a great question. And I'll use a quote here to kind of like build off of that. One of my favorite quotes is that the concepts are few and the methods are many. And just because this works for me does not mean that I'm going to push this narrative on everyone else. Like I will never be someone that says you have to wake up at 4:30 a.m. and you have to grind and you have to suffer and you need to sacrifice. And I know some mornings when I wake up at 4:30, my alarm clock goes off and I need more sleep. It would be much more efficient and effective for my day to not go for that run. But I also know that it makes me feel better and it works for me. So I believe that there are a lot of methods to get to where you want to be and accomplish the goal. And we have to individually, it's an individual responsibility to just take inventory of your life. You know, we're all in different seasons. For me, with like the demands of my business right now and the content that I create, and I'm preparing to launch my new book right now, and 2 young kids, the season of life I'm in right now is just, it's crazy. Mm-hmm. So for me to find time, I have to carve out time or moments of the day that might not be the most ideal, but in order to get everything done that I want to get done in this season, there's things that I have to sacrifice. And I mean, I literally make a list of what are the things that matter to me in life and how am I prioritizing those things. And if it isn't on that list, I say no to 95% of it, because the problem that I used to make is I saw every opportunity as the right opportunity at that time. So I was a yes man, and no matter what was on my plate, I would say yes to things because it was a great opportunity. And I thought that my bandwidth and ability to just keep stacking things on top of my schedule was unlimited. And I learned the hard way that you burn yourself out and you kill yourself through that decision of saying yes to everything. So over time, through lots of repetition and trial and error and making a lot of mistakes, I've become very calibrated in a way that I say no to more than I say yes to. But if I say yes to it, it means I'm all in and I'm going to commit to it. And I'm going to dedicate all of my time and effort. But that was an issue and problem that I made early on in my career when I was younger, was thinking that I was Superman, that I could do everything I wanted to do all at once.
Yeah. I can't help but think you've said 2 things already in the conversation that I think have really everything to do with performance. Because you have all these people that they measure everything, they hack everything, they even look the part. But until you have sort of tried to layer in life with the concept of performance, you realize two really important things that you've shared, which is adaptability. I think is the hierarchy. I think it's number one. If you don't have that ability to be adaptable, whether you're eating, a workaround for your training, when you're hurt, when you're tired, whatever that is, to know like this week I'm going to be on an airplane 3 days. So everyone thinks you can control it, but what they don't really realize is that we all have to adapt, right? Like if you're on a long run and something starts to happen with a toe, it's like you're going to do a workaround. It's like, for me, that's the pinnacle of performance. And the other thing you just said that I think a lot of people miss is to have the courage and take the responsibility to really figure out the way it works for you. I think that a lot of times, and they could come to someone like you and you could tell them what to do because you have experience, you do write programs, you can go on this day, this day, this day, this day. And that might be a great way to start, but still within it, it's like, yeah, ultimately you still have to figure out how it works for you in order to do it for 5 years, 10 years, 50 years. And so I really appreciate that. I'd like to talk about your book that comes out tomorrow. If you're listening to this, and you can pre-order it today if people are hearing it. You sort of share that you had this epiphany. So the title of the book is To Go One More, and you sort of discuss this, and it feels like it was really this launching pad, this moment for you. I think in 2018. Maybe you can share before that. You've had a disciplined background.
I have.
So you're already on a disciplined path. Maybe just share that and then share how you arrived at, to go one more.
Yeah. I mean, I believe that I was raised in a disciplined household, and it was never like a very strict, these are the rules you will follow. If you don't follow, this is what happens. My dad's side of the family, they were dairy farmers in central Pennsylvania. So I learned hard work from them by observing. And then my mom's side of the family was primarily military. So I learned this other type and level of leadership and discipline through them. So it was a very unique environment to grow up in, I could say. So that influenced me to join the military. So I went to college, studied nutrition. I went to college on an Army ROTC scholarship. And then after graduating from college, I went right into the Army. And I commissioned as an infantry officer. So I spent the first year in Fort Benning, Georgia, where I did the infantry officer basic course. I did Ranger school. I did airborne school, Bradley leader course. And I was in Georgia for a year, and then I got stationed at my first duty assignment, which was Fort Hood, Texas in 2014. And that's what ultimately brought me from Pennsylvania through Georgia to Texas. And during this time in the background, I'm trying to build my business, which I launched in 2012, and build that in the small amount of free time that I had while active duty military. So I have a foundation of discipline through the way that I was raised, my family on both sides, and then my exposure to the military and in certain training environments. And to fast forward a little bit, when I transitioned out of the military after my 4-year contract in 2017, I literally made a YouTube video back then. And I said, I will never run a day in my life again. And that's funny now because my life has changed significantly. The company that I run is a performance endurance brand. And since that moment, I have ran multiple marathons, triathlons, ultra races. Endurance and running is now something that I incorporate every day into my life. And I was training for one of my first marathons in 2018. And at the time I was living downtown in Austin, Texas. And back then I was not the runner that I am now. I have built my endurance over time, but I was on a training run. It was a few weeks out from the Austin, Texas marathon. And I had an 18-mile run scheduled for that day. And I was 10 miles into this run and my legs were heavy. I was tired. I was fatigued. I didn't feel like running. I stopped running. I quit. I started walking back to our house. And as I'm walking back to the house, I'm thinking, if I quit on this run right now, what does it say about my character? What does it say about me? What does it say about my future? If I quit on this run, will I quit on my wife? Will I quit on my friends? Will I quit on my business? And I was contemplating all of this as I'm making my way back to the house we were renting at the time. So I stop, I go back to the trail. I force myself to finish the run. I ran 18 miles, ran one additional mile, ran 19 miles that day just to prove to myself that I could. And I didn't think much of it. I came back to my house, took my hat off, wrote one more on the bill of the hat, took a photo of it, posted on social media, and it went nuts for the people who were following me. And all these people took their hats off. They wrote one more under the bill. They took a photo of it. They posted it. They sent it to me. And I realized in that moment, I struck a nerve in a lot of people. It resonated, just that mindset of one more. And that then evolved into go one more. It became my mission. It became the brand motto or tagline. It became the foundation of everything we were doing and that we've done since. But in that moment, when I founded Go One More, it was built off the foundation of an action and just doing more of anything and everything. You know, if you spend one more hour in your business, that will lead you to greater success. If you spend one more hour in the gym, that will lead to greater hypertrophy and muscle gain. If you run one more mile, you'll build more endurance. And that worked for me back then. And Go One More is still an action, but I've learned over time as my life has changed and evolved and developed, Go One More is actually an outcome that is facilitated and achieved by the action of doing more, but more importantly, doing more of the right things for the right reasons at the right time in the right place. And that comes with making a lot of decisions. And I think we all have a responsibility to make very intentional decisions and choices that are driven through clarity, because there's so much power in our decision making. I mean, over the course of a lifetime, we make probably billions of decisions, right? Some small, some large. But if you think about it, and I think anyone can apply this to their life, there's probably a few moments, whether that's 5 or 100, that you've had to make a decision, and the decision you make in that moment ultimately shifts the trajectory of your life. Like the decision that I made back in 2018 to go back to that trail and finish that run, that changed my life. Like Go One More wouldn't be a thing. My brand probably wouldn't be a thing. My business probably wouldn't be here if I didn't make that one decision to walk back to the trail. And over these last 7 years since then, there have been a few moments where I've had to make very, very, very important decisions. And then every day there's decisions we make that ultimately dictate where you end up 10, 20, 30 years from now. And they create the legacy that I believe we all want to create and build and leave behind. So there's power in this decision. And that learning lesson, that evolution has just made me realize that Go One More is not just an action. The action is part of it, but it's so much more than that, and it's an outcome.
This podcast has been brought to you by Laird Superfood. I can talk about Laird Superfood all day long because it was created in my kitchen almost 10 years ago now by my husband, Laird. And it is a brand that I work on daily. We're part of the innovations, part of what's SKUs are coming next. I'm really excited. We have a new instant vanilla latte. All you need is hot water. We've got a nice organic Peruvian bean with that. That's low acidic. We've got greens and we have functional mushrooms. We even have single serve ingredient mushrooms. I'll just share with you what our guardrails are. So starting out with ingredients, and this really comes from Laird. High-level ingredients, and of course, we don't use artificial flavors, but we don't even use natural flavors. And this is something that's actually pretty hard to do if you want to do a food brand. Second is experience. We don't want you to have to sacrifice anything. It tastes amazing, makes you feel great, and yes, it is better for you. And third is we want everything to have a function. So we want the drink to support you in a way, but to have a real function. So for example, a lot of our creamers have adaptogens. We've got greens. We have Hydrate. You got to try our Hydrate. It's freeze-dried coconut right at the source. All you do is put it in water. Great. Taking the kids to their soccer practice. If you're working out, because I know you are. We really try to think about you throughout your day. And then finally, cost. We do our best to really keep costs down and bring you the highest quality products that we can find that taste amazing, that make you feel great, that you can use throughout your day, but also to make it reasonable. So this is something, if you said like, oh, is it your baby? This is definitely one of our work babies. And our family uses it every day, and we're so proud to share it with you. And if you've never tried Laird Superfood, head to lairdsuperfood.com. That's LAIRDSUPERFOOD.com. And if you see something you like, go ahead and put in the code GABBY20, GABBY20 for 20% off your entire order. Now, I will say this, if you're a coffee fanatic, you should try our coffee. We're really known for our creamers, but our coffee is so good. And we have got coffee blends with adaptogens in them. We've got whole beans, however you take your coffee. So if you're interested, head to lairdsuperfood.com and don't forget the code GABBY, GABBY20 for your savings. Do you ever think, now that you've gone through a few of these experiences, and this is like a genuine question, like I think about this a lot, where the moments I'm in certain decisions, maybe with a little more squeeze, and we always get the whisper, right? Is it our inner wisdom? Is it God? Is it, it's like we get a very specific whisper, like you got the whisper, like, hey, you got to go back there and you got to finish. And I wonder, I was thinking about your go one more. It's like also for me feels like this idea of, inside, you do know, but we push it away. And you talk about this as far as like the tenets in your book about embracing discomfort and stuff. Sometimes we let things like discomfort or not being sure, or it's also hard to listen to your own instincts. It's very scary. But that have you sort of gained even more confidence? Because you seem like a person who listens to themselves quite a bit, but that when you get the whisper, you just go, yeah, I know that's going to suck, or it's going to be hard, or it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation. And that's exactly what I have to do.
Yeah, I have a few things on that. I believe that I'm a big person of trusting our intuition. And I think that our gut and our intuition becomes more calibrated the older we get. Like my ability to make decisions now, I'll be 35 this summer, are much greater in terms of leading me to success than they were when I was 25 years old. So with more experience and exposure and repetition, I believe that our intuition and our guts become more calibrated, and that we should listen to our intuition, because oftentimes it's telling us the right thing. And in many moments where I've ignored my intuition and that gut feeling, it's usually led me to a place of failure or loss. I'm also a believer, so I have a foundation of faith and believe in God. And I think that faith allows me to make better decisions that are guided by living a life that's more godlike. And then I believe that it's really important to have a vision for our life. And I've only recently read this book in the past year, but it's become very meaningful in my business, my life. The book is called Beyond Entrepreneurship, BE 2.0. It's by Jim Collins. And chapter 4 is all about vision. And it's described in terms of your business and building a business or brand, but I think it's applicable to our lives. And that if we have a very strong vision and it's clearly defined for our life, that we can make more consistent decisions. And vision, as explained in the book, is made up of 3 components. It is core values, it is purpose, and it's goals. And your core values and your purpose shouldn't change more than once every 100 years. So they're pretty firm. And then goals are 10 to 25 year targets. So if you end up in a spot where you have to make a decision, if you lean on your vision, it's like, okay, I'm stuck in this spot. Do I go left? Do I go right? Well, if I reflect back on my core values, like, what do my core values tell me to do? What does my purpose tell me to do? What does my goal tell me to do? And the way that I've used this vision framework is that when it's clearly defined and written down and known and communicated, that you yourself, or in terms of a business, your team can operate independently and create strategy and tactics on their own that are aligned with your vision. So I think if you know who you are, what you believe in, what you stand behind, and what you're trying to accomplish in life, it makes your ability to make decisions, I don't want to say easier, but you can be more consistent with how you're showing up and responding to those moments.
Yeah. And when I think of Go One More, I feel like that was your life waiting for you. Like we all have these things that I think are meant for us to experience, to express, to be the portal for, your gift. And I think sometimes people are moving through life and they don't realize there's things sitting out there for them if they would just keep plugging into those things that you're talking about. And you talk about it in the book where you talk about being intentional, living intentionally. That in this day and age with the phone and the time pull from everywhere and the sort of noise, how do you keep grounding yourself? I know you have the run in the morning and things like that, but that is very hard to do.
It is, especially with all the distractions that are pulling us in all these different directions. The way that I came to like this importance of intentionality, and I shared this in the book, the first creative hire that I made in my business, his name is Jordan Utter. He still works in the business. He leads all of our creative direction. I saw this note on his computer one day, like a little Post-it note. It was stuck to the corner of his computer screen. And he often does this where he writes like a quote down that's at the top of mind, and then he puts it somewhere where he sees it. And it said, lack of intentionality leads to a repetition of what is easiest. And I remember reading this thinking, that is so powerful. Lack of intentionality leads to a repetition of what is easiest. And I believe that the problem with a lot of people, and I'm not going to act like I'm immune to this because I'm not, but we lack intentionality because we fall into this rhythm of doing what everyone else is doing. Well, everyone else is doing it, so we should just do it that way. Or this is the trend, so we should follow that trend. Everyone's eating this way, we should eat that way. Everyone's training this way, we should train that way. Everyone's building their business, we should build our business that way. And when we just follow those trends, we oftentimes ignore or lose what is so original and authentic to ourselves. So what I try to do is put on blinders and ignore what everyone else is doing. And that's why I lean so heavily on that vision, because when you write down your core values and you write down your purpose, and I don't think purpose and core values need to be like these lofty things. They should be very tactical. For example, core values aren't like, they can be, but integrity, honesty, transparency, respect, like those are all great traits to have, but let's get like more tactical with it. Like in my business, one of our core values is we will never sacrifice profitability for growth, and that we will always treat people with kindness regardless of how they treat us. It's like very clear. Hey, this is how we operate. This is how our family operates. This is how our team operates. And then our goals are very clear. Like in 10 years, we will accomplish this. In 15 years, we will accomplish this. And I believe if you're very honest and authentic with establishing your vision, sometimes you just have to turn off the noise of everyone else. Like I'm on social media, obviously, but I'm consuming things that I find interesting, not necessarily like what's trendy and how should I be thinking and how should I be acting and all of these things. I use social media more for entertainment, but I believe that if you're allowing social media and media in general to guide the way that you act and the things that you want to accomplish and do, you're going to fall off course from what you authentically really want to do in life. And then that noise just buries you.
Yeah, it is very interesting, especially when you watch people where they have a unique point of view or entry, and then all of a sudden they start getting attention, and then someone got in their ear about the way you're supposed to do it. Like it should be this long and you have to have this. And it's so interesting to watch them lose the thing, their voice, their point of view or whatever it was that actually got them to the place. It's hard. That actually makes me curious where you do get a lot of attention. Your brand is built around part of the success of your brand, right? Is you bringing awareness to you and to the program and to the whole thing. How do you keep, I won't say ego, but just, that other side that can pop up and be like, well, if I do this, or, maybe we'll get more. What isn't necessarily even, against one of your principles or your values, but you just think, oh, that's not me. How do you keep that at bay when there is sort of a lot on the line for that space?
I mean, from like a creator perspective, I only create the things that I want to create and that I'm actually interested in. So if I'm going into a prep for a race, for example, it's because I really want to go into that race. But I equally love training for and racing and competing equally as much as I love documenting and creating content. So the things that I decided to pursue are things that I actually want to pursue and I'm interested in. And when it comes to like having an ego and being humble, I still always am reminded that I'm just this guy who picked up a camera in 2014 with my last $500 because my business wasn't growing and I had no other way to make it work. I started my business in 2012 and I told my dad that first year we were going to make $1 million. And he said, Nick, if it were that easy, everyone would do it. And year one, we did $20,000 in revenue. Year two, we did $20,000 in revenue. Year three, we did $20,000 in revenue. And I was like, man, $1 million seems really far from now. And then in 2014, I decided to pick up a camera. I spent all of my money that I had and just started documenting. And that's all it's been, is just bringing people along for the ride and sharing this journey of what it's like building a business and going after your goals and chasing them down and working really hard. But that's the only thing that separates what I've done, if we go bare bones, to what other people can do as well. I believe that my greatest strength is just being extremely consistent. One of the things that I share in the book and that my running coach, Jeff Cunningham, said a few years ago that I'd never forget is that it's better to be consistently good than occasionally great. And he was speaking about this in terms of the runners he coaches, but I believe it's so applicable in everything that we do in life. I've just been very consistently good for the better half of 13 years now. And there was never a moment where there was this explosion or blow up, but just small incremental growth year over year over year. And that is compounded to where we're at today. And I know that if I keep applying that same consistently good approach, 10, 20, 30 years from now, we'll keep experiencing that incremental compounding growth.
Yeah. I mean, you just built a new headquarters. How many employees do you guys have now?
We have 43 full-time employees. We just moved into the new headquarters 3 weeks ago. I'm actually recording this right here from our old headquarters because this is the last day we have this office, and our podcast setup is in here still. But we've been moving everything over to the new HQ these last couple of weeks.
I think we have a few businesses, and people don't realize, they'll see the outcome, and I'm just curious on the nights, when you stay awake and you think, oh, are we going to be able to keep going, and can we, and now you have kids. And so I think it's just, there's other things on the line. What do you tell yourself on the nights that before, when it was like, oh, $20,000 and $20,000 and $20,000, what do you tell yourself? Are you looking for, sometimes I ask for like either creative solutions, I ask for, the right wisdom, the faith. And I also really appreciate when you talk about tying it into your values and your purpose, because people don't realize, if you don't actually genuinely believe in what you're doing, really, you would have been done after the second year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But when you're really like just getting pressed, because it's different. It's a different press and discomfort than running long races. Where do you go inside yourself? Do you have something you do that you lean on that just helps bring you buoyancy to get up the next day and get after it?
I feel this heavy responsibility for the people in the business and their families, and that, when I'm laying in bed at night and it's what's keeping me driving forward. I believe that if you are type A and you are an achiever, you thrive with just the constant pursuit of growth and opportunity and potential. Even if I personally couldn't make any more money in my business, I would keep building it because, well, one, my name is on it, but two, I actually do love the process of building. And I love the process of seeing and experiencing growth and pushing things forward. And I get a lot of fulfillment and satisfaction out of just experiencing the return on really hard work and seeing it pay off. So that's what brings me fulfillment. But I also get a lot of fulfillment and feel the responsibility of, I got 43 full-time employees. They have families, their families depend on the money they make here in this business. And some of them have moved out of state and relocated and, made huge career shifts. And I have to show up for them. I want to show up for them. And I feel that responsibility all the time. And I will always feel that responsibility. That's part of being a leader. And I was listening to this podcast segment a few weeks ago, and it was Pastor Joby Martin, and it was talking about like growing up and maturing. And in the context of the conversation, it was talking about like what happens when you go from being a boy to a man. But I think in this conversation, it doesn't have to be gender specific. It can be just like maturing and growing up. And it's his mindset shift of going from being so focused only on yourself to understanding that life is about being this selfless servant to others. And when you realize that, whether that's being a selfless servant to your family or your employees or just the people in your life or strangers on the street, that brings another level of perspective and satisfaction and fulfillment. And money can't touch it. And for some people who are younger, they might say, there's no way. There's no way that brings more joy than money. But for this season of life that I'm in, and as I've grown up, I've realized that it is so true and so real.
Yeah. And it also takes care of a lot of little glitches you could have in your operating system when that's part of your fuel. When we were talking about ego or, fear or other things, it's like almost when you're doing it from that space and place, it kind of I feel like it orients you to making better decisions and all of these things even easier. I think it's a really important point. And you talk about, I don't want to leave consistency yet, because you talk about consistency over intensity. People don't often, they see someone like you, they see your training, they see your physique, they see the people that you are training with, and they think, oh my God, these guys are, and these people are so intense. But you really drive home like, yes, but still consistency is more important than intensity.
Yeah. When a lot of people meet me, they think that I train like 8 hours a day. I'm like, no. Like, it's typically like an hour in the morning during my run. And then if I strength train, it's in the afternoon for 45 minutes, maybe an hour. At the max, I'm training twice a day, right? 2 hours a day right now, twice a day. But normally I'm training 1 hour a day. But I do that every single day. And then when it comes to diet, I'll go out to dinner with people for a business meal or just friends. And I might order a glass of wine, or I might dive into like some of the appetizers, and people are like, whoa, you're drinking that or eating that? It's like, yeah, I mean, this is not what I eat every day, and I'm not going to have more than this one glass of wine, but I like to enjoy myself and I have fun, and I'm not always intense. I'm light. I like humor. I like making people laugh. There's a certain time and place where you turn on the intensity. Like when I'm towing the line for a marathon, when I ran my last marathon, it was the California International Marathon. It's where I ran my PR of 2 hours and 39 minutes. When I was on that starting line and people were trying to talk to me, I was looking for, I ignored them. I was looking straight forward. I was locked in. For me, that's like going to war. I'm going to fight this battle for the next 26.2 miles. Don't get in my way. Don't mess with me. Don't talk to me. So there's a time and place where I think you have to flip that switch and really lock in. That's intentional focus. It's intentional time. It's a very intentional effort. But that is not the all the time for me, right? There's moments where you have to apply that level of intensity, but the consistency is where you win.
I know you can get your run done alone, but do you think you could, and I don't mean in the pursuit of the business, but be in pursuit of that level of training that you do without a community? I think, people hear it all the time, like, oh, community. I think they don't realize that even someone like you who is highly disciplined can do even elements of your training alone. That it probably is imperative to have a community to get it done.
There's been training preps that I've done by myself, and there's been training preps that I've done with other people. There's been training preps where I've had a coach and I haven't had a coach. I can tell you that the preps that I've done when I've had a coach, I've had a mentor, I've had a guide, and I've trained with other people, specifically people who are better than me, I have always performed at a higher level, and it's been more enjoyable. I mean, if I have to, like this last marathon prep I did, for example, I was all by myself, every workout, every speed workout, every run, every long run. And I got it done. I achieved a PR, but it wasn't as fun as the ones where I'm showing up at the track Wednesday morning with all of these athletes who are 10 times faster than me, pushing me, coaches screaming in my ear. And you leave that workout being like, holy smokes, I just got my butt kicked, but you get so much better. I believe having people in our lives, a community, is such a powerful tool. Like, I just had this conversation with someone on my podcast. His name's Nick Lavery, and he was the first Green Beret, Special Forces, to go back to a team overseas in combat with a above the knee amputee. And we talked about how powerful it is and essential for independent personal development. But you enable those skills and that capacity when you are part of a team, you are part of a community. and it's so much more powerful. One of my favorite things to say is you can go really fast alone, but you can go so much further together. That's not just a saying. That's reality. It's true.
Yeah. Yeah. I even think I think about that about partnership even, it's like, if you can be fortunate enough to even just have a good partner, like what's happening in your house day to day, how in the long run that enables you, the level of growth, even as an individual person, and, all the ways that those opportunities really I feel like we only know ourselves through those entanglements. And then really that is the best of us is with other people, because I think someone sees someone like you and thinks, oh, it's just automatic pilot and they just go. And it's like, oh, yes and no, like they need their community as well. If you have an athlete that comes in, this notion of, you said speed training, being fast, there are so many benefits to finding ways to be fast here and there. And as people get older, I'm 20 years older than you are, but as people get older, it's like they really become afraid. They don't know how. It's like most of us, they can't generate enough foot force on the ground to even consider it a sprint. Things like that. If someone was like willing to take a look at it, how would you invite them to say, okay, go to a soft track, and these would be some really nice, easy ways to start exploring, being a little bit, just have some speed training.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few different directions to take this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'll start off with like just providing some background and context. Like whenever I go into a marathon training block, for example, when I'm out of a marathon training block and I'm just running, like right now, I'm not doing any speed workouts. I'm just running every morning, pretty much aerobic. I'm running slower paces. When I jump back into a marathon training block, that first couple of speed workouts back is extremely challenging because my leg turnover just isn't there. Mm-hmm. So sometimes that leg turnover is this neuromuscular stimulus and adaptation that you just need to train to bring it back into your regular training routine. If you haven't sprinted or done anything fast paced or speed for a long time, when you go out and do that, it's going to work different muscles. You're going to be sore. Your leg turnover isn't there. Your mind's trying to speak to your legs, and there's this miscommunication. So I would, one, say take it slow, but maybe use like a different form of training to get to the point where you want to be. I think for most people, utilizing a bike, like an assault bike or an echo bike, is a great tool. And you can get a crazy good anaerobic VO2 max workout on some of these ergs, like the ski erg, a rower, a bike erg, an assault bike, an echo bike, with like 10 to 20 second sprints. And they don't have to be you actually sprinting. And I think for a lot of people who are untrained or unconditioned, or maybe even older, sprinting on a track and running might not even be the best option for you. Maybe you hop on one of these bikes, or you get in the pool and you do something that's less impactful, but you can get the same stimulus in your lower body, your muscular system, your respiratory system, cardiovascular system. So I think I go back to that quote I said earlier: the concepts are few, the methods are many. There's not one method that works for everyone, but there's all these things to consider. Like, where are you at in your training? Where are you at in your experience? What do you enjoy? What feels good? You have injuries, all of these things. But there's so many different ways to get to the concepts that improve the quality of our life and the health span and lifespan of individuals.
That's a great point. I have a friend who's a rugby player, and they obviously can generate a lot of wattage. And so I'll ask him to help me because, sometimes it falls off, and he was having me do like kick the door sort of movements in 3 foot of water. And, because a lot of times if you think, oh, I'm going to move my leg forward, he's like, no, you got to kick the door open. And I thought, this is not hurting me in any way, is very hard. because I'm trying to generate force and water. And I love the fact that it was both, because that's the other thing, right? Is you're trying to figure out ways not to be beat up so that you can do it till you're 80. And speaking of the amount of miles that you lay down, how are you not crushed? Like you said, you're 35 or thereabouts. Um, are your joints, everything feels good?
Yeah, everything feels good. Like when I first started running seriously in 2018, I mean, like I ran when I was in the Army, but we were running because like we had to run.
Yeah.
The watch I wore was a G-Shock back then. I didn't track mileage. I didn't track pace. I didn't know what I was doing. We just went and ran for time. And then when I slowly started to like get back into running after getting out of the military, when I started running, I experienced every running injury under the sun. I mean, shin splints, plantar fasciitis, knee problems, hip pain, everything. And I look back at videos when I was running then compared to now, and my biomechanics have just naturally evolved and adapted to become more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really important for new runners to slowly ramp up running volume to allow your body to just adapt to the stimulus you're providing. But I'm also a huge advocate of cross training, where I don't go from marathon prep to marathon prep to marathon prep. Like in this past year, I did a high rocks. So that was a big shift in my training. I'm always strength training to support my endurance goals, lower body and upper body. So I'm building in strength and durability in my joints and my ligaments and tendons and muscles. And I go through seasons where I'm running a lot. And then I'll go through seasons where I'm just running at my baseline weekly mileage. And I try to balance all of that. And I have a huge emphasis on diet and recovery and just listening to my body and what it's telling me to do. Like I said, there's a time to push and there's a time not to push. But I've been very grateful that I haven't experienced major injuries over the course of these last 13 years. There have been times where I've had to take, a few weeks off here and there based off of something that happens or I'm going through in terms of like these wear and tear injuries. But I've been very fortunate that there hasn't been a huge obstacle that I've come over with training.
Or like not getting hit by like an SUV, you mean?
That did happen. I did get hit by a vehicle. Yeah.
I was thinking in my mind, he's like, I've not really had any major events. And I was like, I guess you wouldn't consider getting hit by an SUV while you're out running.
I surprisingly bounced back from that one a little faster than I would have probably should have, in all honesty. But I mean, that was a life-changing moment. That happened this past December.
I have a friend in January, February, who lives outside of Austin, who's a runner and was hit by a car on the road.
It's a scary thing.
It was okay, but I was like, when I heard that, I go, I don't know what's going on over there.
Yeah, it was a road. We were renting a house at the time while our house was being done that we were building. And I had to travel a mile on this major road to get to the ranch roads that I would run on. And my wife, Steph, was always freaking out because she knew I had to run on this 1 mile stretch every morning. But it was so early, I barely saw any cars. And it was a week before we ended up moving. And the crazy part is, it was like 2 days before it happened. I said to my wife, I'm surprised I made it this long without getting hit by a car on this road. And then 2 days later, hit. But by the grace of God, it was okay.
Yeah. What do you think for let's say the householder? I know you're around a lot of high performance people, but just for the householder, what are like just some of the most common mistakes you either see in starting to run? You even said you had a running coach. So starting to run and even in working out, because now you've sort of watched a lot of people. Just from your point of view, what are some of the common mistakes and things that maybe people might want to consider when they're going to started to level up on some of this?
I think part of it is just ramping up volume way too fast. Like you can't go from this is applicable to training in general, but especially running. You can't go from, I mean, you could apply this to any part of life, actually. 0 miles a week to 50 miles a week. Like that is a recipe for injury of everything that's going to happen. And you're just not going to enjoy it. You're going to be in pain, you're suffering, you're hurting. So I've always followed the rule of thumb of not increasing running mileage more than 10% week over week. So I think that is, one of the things that people can implement right away. Like don't ramp up training volume too fast, or you put yourself at risk of injury. And then when it comes to running, one of the things that, again, to quote Jeff Cunningham, my running coach, he said is there's this thing called running competency. And when you first start running, you might start running because all these other people, running is hot right now, right? Running is popular. And you see all these people joining run clubs and they're talking about the runner's high and they're enjoying it and how it's changed their life. And if you've never been a runner and you start running and you go out for your first couple of runs, you're probably thinking, what are all these people talking about? I'm not experiencing any of these positives. It's all negatives. I hate all of this. But you have to go through that process, which you have to go through the mud sometimes in life to get to the other side, the other bank. And over time, which might take weeks or even months, you finally unlock this, what is called running competency, where like you're just running one day randomly or you're training one day randomly. And all of a sudden, wow, I actually feel good. This feels kind of effortless. I enjoy this. You can, like, in the gym, if you've been training for a long time, you know what the pump is. You go into the gym, you hit a chest workout, blood moves into the muscle you're training within certain rep ranges, and you get this pump. And for people who do bodybuilding and strength training, that experience is addicting. But trying to explain the pump to someone who's never trained before, goes into the gym, they can't experience the pump. There's such a huge disconnection between like what someone else is experiencing and describing and then what you're trying to accomplish. It takes time to start feeling, experiencing, and creating that pump. So you have to give yourself some grace and just allow that time to take place, endure the process to get to a point where that competency sinks in and is present.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I'm going to go on a limb and say that the majority of people who train are not going to really understand ever that level of, certain things like the pump. And, it's amazing the different types of relationships you can have with movement and the different experience where someone might be like, that was somehow enjoyable to you. And it's like, oh, it actually is.
I've had so many runs still that are miserable the entire time through. Like you just go out there and in the first 20 steps, you're thinking, nah, this ain't my day. It happens to me all the time, but I still go and finish my 8-mile run. And there have been times where I have literally been running and it feels so effortless and I have this crazy high. It's not many, but I start crying. I've cried during runs before because you unlock this feeling and experience, and it is absolutely incredible. And that moment will keep you going for years to come because of the few times you've reached it and experienced it.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. And unfortunately, it only really comes, or fortunately, it only really comes through having suffered quite a bit, I think. And you really share that in Go One More, which is like, hey, developing a relationship with discomfort. I don't know why we've come to a place where it's like, we don't realize like this is also part of the human experience, whether it's marriage or growing a business or working for somebody or being a parent or fitness. It's like one of the colors, one of the shades, one of the tones is it's uncomfortable. And you really talk a lot about that.
Yeah, I believe there's like two different types of hardship. There's the ones that you choose to do. Mm-hmm. And that might be like a race or an ultra marathon. This past weekend, we hosted a race on our ranch. It was a last man standing race. It was wild. It was a 4.2 mile loop, and it restarted every hour on the hour until there was one runner left. And we ended up having two people win because a storm completely destroyed our race. But we had two runners go for 56 hours, 56 loops, 235 miles. The amount of hardship and being uncomfortable and just suffering that these two runners, these two 21-year-old guys went through was remarkable. But at the same time, they chose that hardship. And that is very different, in my opinion, than going through hardship that you didn't choose to go through. Like my mom, for example, in 2019, got diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And from the time of diagnosis till the time she passed away, it was 6 months. It was stage 4. It was very quick. It was extremely painful. That was a different type of hardship and suffering for her that she didn't choose, that she had to experience and go through. And people in life every day are going through hardships that they didn't want to or didn't expect or didn't plan for. But I believe that when we choose to do hard things, it can reinforce and teach us adaptability and how to become more resilient, so that when we are faced with adversity and hardship, we hopefully can respond a little bit better, but it's still not perfect. And I almost have a hard time grouping them together because they are very different, those two types of hard.
Yeah. That's what I have 3 daughters, and I'm always like, listen, wherever you cannot have drama in your life, do that. Choose to be that person, because sometimes stuff is going to find you and you have to face it, and you won't be able to solve it exactly the way you want or ever. You know, it's like if you weren't able to find the solution for your mom getting better, it's like, then you sit in, those things. And it's interesting because one is almost a gift where you go, hey, I get to choose my hard. And the other is the thing to learn from and to have to go through. Do you think that the situation with your mom, because then you got married in 20, right?
Correct. Yep.
I just mean that sometimes did that also kind of crystallize like, hey, family and this and all of that, that's super important. Like, do you think there was anything in that helped you see it a little differently?
I don't know if that did. I think that moment in my life definitely reconfirmed why I needed to believe in God and have a foundation of faith in my life and our relationship. Because at the time, me and Steph, my wife now, we weren't married yet. We were engaged, getting ready to get married. And one of the things that my mom said, her last couple of days, she was in hospice and we were all at the house with her. And she said, if you ever want to see me again, you have to believe in God. So that was very strong for us in our life. I would say, though, it wasn't until my daughter was born in 2022 that changed my life in terms of understanding how important family is and having this perspective of, okay, like work is really important, but it's not everything. And one of the books that has been very instrumental to like this chapter of my life, it's called Halftime by this author named Bob Buford. And he talks about how in a lot of people's lives, we have this moment of halftime. And in the first half of our life, we are focused on achieving success. And then something happens where there's this significant emotional event or experience, and you have this new perspective and you realize that the second part of your life shifts from being focused on success to significance and creating impact and being selfless and helping people. And I believe having kids and around this part of my life right now, I've had this shift in perspective of like success and growth and potential and achievement is important, but it's not everything. And significance is at the tip of the spear. I want my kids to truly want me around when they're older. And I don't want them to look back at these years saying, oh, dad was always gone and dad was always working. And it's just like, it sounds so cliche, but my daughter's about to turn 3 this year. I'm like, where did these last 3 years go? Like, how fast is this going to go before she's out of the house? You know?
Yeah. I have a friend, Tom Papa. He's a comedian, and he also says, be somebody that they want to come home to. And, it's funny if you spend the time. And the other thing, my oldest daughter is 29, and so I'm obviously my youngest daughter's graduating high school. Is the other interesting thing, and I'll be fascinated to see for someone like you who is, you're very organized and everything. There's sort of systems in place. It'll be really interesting, and you're already at some of it where you can't control them. You really you can't you can set up framework. You can have expectate. We sort of have, this is how we do it, or there's these kinds of boundaries, but ultimately they are going to do it their way, especially when they're older.
Yeah.
So I'll be interested to see the surrendering that continues, because you seem to be figuring that all out as you go. And that made me think about when you're on a long race, and it's like literally you're not that you're done, but you're done. Where do you get the extra fuel? And I know, okay, go one more, but is there something that clicks in you? Or do you tell yourself something? How do you find it in your body? How do you do that?
I try to really pull myself away from the situation that I'm in. And it's just realizing or thinking about, how am I going to feel about myself and the decisions I make now a day from that moment. If I quit right now, or I stop, or I give up, or I give a portion of the effort that I could, the next day when I'm packing up all my stuff and I'm getting back on the plane to fly back home, will I be proud of that effort? And it's so easy to give up in the moment and justify why you should allow weakness to take over. But if you allow yourself to just forward think for a moment and put yourself in that position, I think can shift the way you act in that moment in time. I do that with my diet, for example, just to make things very simplified. If I'm in a situation and we're out to dinner and I'm in a prep and I'm very dialed, and on the menu I see this thing that I know is not favorable for my training conditions and performance at the time, I'm like, but that looks so good and I want that so bad. And I see everyone else ordering it. I literally take a moment. I think, okay, tomorrow morning when I wake up to go train, how will I feel based off of what I'm eating right now? And that allows me to make the better decision to set myself up for the future. So forward thinking, backwards planning. Now, if I'm not in a prep, I'm going for that thing, but it really depends on what are the goals right now and what is the impact of this decision for tomorrow, the next week. Is it going to hurt me from accomplishing the things that I'm working so hard to get to?
Yeah. When you have, and maybe I could just ask you a few technical questions about your food, when you're getting ready for an event, in what ways, I understand the tightening up of, but is there anything special that you're sort of eating more of to support your recovery and your system during those weeks versus when you're just, you have a little bit of a downtime? And also, what else are you building in there to help with recovery? Because I would imagine that that's one of the biggest concerns.
Yeah. I don't implement a lot of these recovery systems or protocols, to be honest. My recovery is sleep and food. And I also love the sauna. Like I get in the sauna most nights before going to bed, and that helps me wind down tremendously. But in terms of diet, like it depends on so much. What are the weather conditions in the moment? Like, is it a summer Texas training block where my sodium requirements are absolutely ridiculous? I did a sweat test analysis a few years ago during a training block in July, and I was losing 2,500 milligrams of sodium per hour during my runs. So obviously electrolyte intake and sodium balance becomes really important then. But for the most part, when I go into a big training block, protein stays consistent. I typically lower fats a little bit, actually, because I'm typically trying to get leaner around some of these races that I'm doing. But carbohydrate increases tremendously, significantly, and especially my carbs around my sessions. So I love incorporating as many carbs as my body can handle, and it's typically shifting some of those sources to more easily digestible carbs, simpler carbs that I can eat in between workouts, before workouts, after workouts. But I try to just get as many carbs in as possible while still staying lean and recovering with sufficient protein. But it's really just like cleaning things up. I'm not much of a snacker. A lot of my meals are very consistent. Like meal 1, 2, and 3 are almost the same thing every single day. Dinner with the family is where I have some variation. And then I don't track my food right now, but I am pretty aware. Like I'll lay in bed at night or as we're winding down and just in my head start adding up the amount of carbs that I've had. Mm-hmm. And if I think I'm under or low, I'll go, have something before going to bed to get more carbs in, because I can tell the next day if I underfueled the previous day. I'm very in tune with my body now, where if I go out for a run tomorrow and I didn't eat enough carbs today, my body will tell me in the first mile and I'll feel weak and sluggish. So it's really like, I've been doing this for so long at this point where it becomes very intuitive, and I'm keeping track of what I'm consuming throughout the day and trying to get a variation of different colors of fruits and vegetables and micronutrients, loads of fruit, loads of lean protein, and as many carbs as my body can handle.
Do you eat grains at all? Like, or would you eat rice or anything like that?
I eat a lot of rice. I do a lot of oats. There's certain grains my body just doesn't love. Like, I was trying to experiment with some sorghum. I don't know if you've ever tried sorghum. Tried that a few weeks ago, and sometimes like these high fiber grains just don't do really well with me. So like I'm willing to try anything, but if it doesn't work well with me, I don't feel great, doesn't digest easily, I'll avoid it. But I do probably 2 cups of rice a day. I do a serving of oats every morning. I do a lot of fruit, lots and lots of fruit, honey. I'll add maple syrup in there. But I'd say carbs wise, like it's my main sources are rice, potatoes, and oats.
Yep. And as a parent, I always tell people this is what we eat in our house. This is how we're eating. But when they get older and they're sort of bringing really weird snacky food into your house, I never freaked out, because I sort of thought, oh, these are these weird stages that they're going through, and they all get through it. Do you guys have a specific strategy? Because you'll hear parents always trying to figure out how to get their little kids to eat well. Or is it just, hey, this is how our family eats, and you guys are along for the ride, and we're not doing chicken tenders for you, and like, how does it work?
Yeah, right now, like my daughter being 3, like when she was a little younger and she first started eating, she would eat anything. Like whatever we were making for dinner, she would eat. Pasta, rice, chicken. I am really proud that both my kids, my daughter and my son, love eating meat off of a bone. So if we're doing steak night, they don't want the steak, they want the bone. They both hold the bone and they just gnaw on it. But right now, my daughter, she's going through this phase where she doesn't want to eat a lot of things we're eating. And she wants like the chicken tenders and those kind of things. So we'll find better options. You know, there's like, you can get pretty clean, like chicken tenders now. And we'll get sweet potato fries from like Sprouts that we'll throw in the air fryer. So we try to get her to eat as much of what we're eating as possible. And sometimes she does, and sometimes she doesn't. And we're pretty open to being flexible. Just if she's going to eat something that we're not making yet, we'll make it on the side. She's in a huge like peanut butter and jelly kick right now. But I want my daughter and my son, I don't want them to be afraid of food. You know, when I was younger, I actually had an eating disorder when I was in high school, middle school, high school. So I've always had.
How did it express itself?
I was 14 years old, and I literally just, and I can't tell you when or why to this day, but I just had this drive to start controlling what I was consuming. And it started small, of just training excessively and then eating less. And then it got to the point where it was training very excessively and eating less and less and less, to the point where I was hospitalized and my body was shutting down. I was starving myself, and I was probably eating maybe a couple hundred calories a day, if that. And it got really out of control really quickly. So for years, I struggled with unhealthy relationships with food. And I believe that's probably one of the reasons I can be so disciplined and dialed in, because I can control my training, my diet with extreme discipline, which is a blessing and a curse. But I don't want my kids to experience that same type of all consuming food fear type of mindset and mentality. And I'm always aware of that, as especially my daughter's getting older, how we're talking about food and showcasing food and body image and performance and fueling and all of those things.
Yeah, it's really important. It is they're going to be there. They're going to have to absorb those practices for their reasons, right? Like that's the hope. You hope that the reason they don't do X, Y, and Z, or they do X, Y, and Z, is because they understand how they feel about it, versus like you've pushed it on them beyond. And it is interesting to watch them go through those phases where they all of a sudden will make choices that you think, oh, that's a really good choice, but they understand why they make the choice after,
Right.
For themselves. So, you're married and both of you are sort of go-getters. People ask me all the time, like, oh, are you and Laird competitive? I'm like, absolutely not. We say, leave your sword at the door. I'm here to make your life better. What have you learned in the early stages? Because I'll be honest, the early part of my marriage for me was much more of a dance, because I was learning the steps, than, let's say, the last sort of 15 years. So I'm curious, what have you learned that has been helpful to you as a partner to somebody in this beautiful new chapter of being in a partnership?
I think the biggest thing I'm learning right now is that, I've always heard of the love languages, and I'll be honest, I never took it serious early on, but it's a real thing. And we all experience and show love in different ways. And I didn't respect that enough early on, where like my wife, for example, she grew up in a family that celebrated holidays, with all these traditions, and we celebrated holidays, but in our household, it wasn't that big of a deal. So
not a lot of decorations,
not a lot of decorations. And like, it wasn't like above and beyond. Like we grew up in a family that was very loved and cared for, but holidays or birthdays, they were celebrated, but it wasn't excessive. So just like, I'm in this season right now where I'm being pulled in all these different directions of like the business and my kids and also my wife. And I think I made the mistake, as life became crazier and there were all these responsibilities, that I could get by with not doing some things for my wife because I was providing in other ways. And that gave me like I don't have to show up in other ways to support and love. And I'm just learning now as kids are in the picture and business is bigger and wilder, like we still have to slow down and continue to work on our relationship and our marriage and pour time into it. And I think you can really easily, especially in this chapter of life, become roommates where you're just like passing by and just trying to make things work and blocking and tackling throughout the day. And then before you know it, like you haven't actually had a conversation for a week plus of time. So we're trying to like slow down and spend like time together and love each other in the way that each one of us wants to receive and show love, which is, it's hard.
It is. It's the dance. I almost got divorced after 5 years of marriage. I will say this, a lot of times males don't realize that you can set a tone, right? So, and I don't mean romance and huge grand gestures, but very subtle sort of, I see you when you talk, I'm listening. 10 seconds, 15 seconds. I appreciate you. These weird, very small tonally things can make, I believe, the female partner really blossom in an interesting way. And I always told Laird, listen, I'll do everything for you that a wife does. I'll make you dinner. I'll do your laundry. I'll do everything, but treat me like your girlfriend. And it really seems to work out when you can pick that up. It could, listen, it doesn't have to be hours and hours. It can just be like, oh yeah, okay, I see you. I'm listening. You look great. Okay. It goes a long way.
One of the things me and Steph were talking about a few weeks ago was even just like the way you, and this can go for like your relationship or just the way you have, you talk to other people on a daily basis. Your body positioning will tell you how interested you are in someone's conversation. And if I have a very busy day and someone pulls me alongside as I'm like walking through the office, I will position my body in the way that I want to go. And I didn't know I was doing this. This had to be identified as opposed to intentionally positioning my body towards them, engaging. Because even though I felt engaged, my body was saying, I'm going this way and I'm going to signal that I'm going this way to expedite this conversation. And we do these things sometimes and we don't even realize it. It's like we're so caught up on the mission that we're in that it's challenging to be present in the things that pop up as we're on that mission to accomplish.
Yeah. And those things are always popping up. So in finishing this up, I'd be remiss not to ask, do you take any supplements in general? Because people always want to know.
Yeah. I mean, I own a supplement company, so I do take supplements.
Yeah.
I start my day every morning with, we have a carbohydrate powder. So it's called G1M Sport. I do G1M Sport and, one of our bars is called a Go Bar every morning. So I want carbs and electrolytes before my run. After my run, I'll eat breakfast. And like I said, I'm very routine and consistent. So my breakfast right now is half a cup of oats. I'll cook those. I'll add in some cinnamon, some maple syrup or honey. I'll do berries, like 150 grams of berries. And I'll do 4 whole eggs. And then I'll do a greens powder or reds powder, or multivitamin, joint support, fish oil. And then I'll use creatine and whey protein or plant-based protein throughout the day. And then in the evening to wind down, I'll take a sleep supplement that we have with GABA, 5-HTP, magnesium, Levagen Plus. And those are my foundational supplements right now. And then based off of my training, what I'm doing, I'll add in some of our carbohydrate and electrolyte powders based off of energy demands and what I'm doing and what I need.
Mm-hmm. If you have been in a situation where maybe you're not feeling great, is there any marker? Is there any, something physical that you do pay attention to that you're like, okay, you know what? I got to stop?
Resting heart rate is like the number one data point. So I'll track my sleep. We have an 8 sleep on our bed, which I love. You know, it cools the temperature of our bed down every night, and we have a routine where by the time I'm in bed, the mattress is already cooled, and then by the time I'm waking up, it's warming back up. And then I'll track our sleep analysis. Me and my wife both do through our 8 sleep. And then I will monitor objectively my resting heart rate. And if my resting heart rate starts elevating slightly over time, I'll know that I'm pushing a little bit too hard, or I'm not recovering enough, or I might be getting sick. But like if I'm in a training block, I should see that resting heart rate slowly decreasing. And if I see it going the other way, I know something's wrong.
Yeah, that's great. Well, listen, Nick, I could ask you a million technical questions. I will ask you one last question about training. So you guys sometimes will have runs and lifts even close together. In your sort of perspective and experience for, like, let's say the householder who's fit, and in your programs, you do, right, like, you know, you sort of separate the body, you have different kind of training blocks and when to run and when to rest. But typically, and it's not a perfect world and you're not prescribing to somebody, how do you like to invite people to sort of look at their training week and how to break it up?
I mean, I think it's so individual specific. Mm-hmm. You know, like how do you like to train and what are you training for? And the difference between like working out and training is that training has specificity. So if I'm going into a marathon training block, regardless of how I like to train, I'm going to typically reduce the volume of strength training. I'm going to increase the volume of running, and there's going to be very structured and specified workouts to accomplish the goal. But I think for most people, like general population, it's how do you like to train? And I think that most people should be finding a way to incorporate some cardiovascular conditioning in some strength training throughout the week. And that can be like full body strength training days where maybe 2 to 3 days a week, you're lifting resistance training full body, but then you're also running on those other days. But I think just making sure you have those two incorporated weekly is critical for health span and lifespan.
Yeah. So critical. Because you're an entrepreneur, when you have the moments, everybody gets there, where you feel underwater and you don't know what to do, how do you get help? Do you have a mentor? Where do you go to lean on? Because you're building the path as you go. How do you solve new problems that you haven't seen before?
I mean, I have a great team. I'm very grateful for the team that we have here in the business with very talented individuals. So I feel very confident in delegating when I need to delegate. And I mean, that wasn't the case early on. You know, early on in the days where you're all by yourself, you're just surviving. You're making it work. But I realized early on, and I'm glad that I did, that I couldn't do this on my own, and I needed people to help and support me. I have a mentor in the business. His name's Chris Hickey. He is one of the best people in my life who I can go to on personal or professional matters, and always tells me what I need to hear, not necessarily what I want to hear. I think we all need a person like that in our corner. Yeah. But in the moments where I feel like I'm about to drown, I always remember that I don't not want to feel that, because sometimes those feelings and experiences are a reminder that we're pushing really hard and that there's growth on the other side, and we need that discomfort. We need that inconvenience, that uncomfortable pressure. But simultaneously, there's ways to relieve that pressure and stress by delegating, by building on a team, by having a community. And by having a mentor, you don't need a million mentors, but maybe just having one person in your life. And when nothing else works, I honestly rely on my morning run and podcasts or audiobooks. There have been audiobooks over the course of these last 10 years that have changed my life, that have come into my life at the right times, for the right reasons, at the right moments, and have provided me all the answers that I was looking for. And I'm constantly and consistently consuming some type of content, but I'm making sure it's not garbage and it's stuff that's actually going to solve problems and help me grow.
Yeah. Well, Nick, I really congratulate you on everything, on your family, on your business, and now tomorrow your book, Go One More. Can you just remind people, direct them to everything, every place that they can find you, and if they want to explore your products more?
Yeah, for sure. No, I appreciate it. On YouTube, I have documented my life since 2014. I have over 1,000 videos there of showcasing the behind the scenes of building my business and growing a family and all the races and preps I've done. So just on YouTube, it's Nick Bare. Instagram, Nick Bare Fitness. My company is Bare Performance Nutrition. That's bpnsups.com. And then I run a podcast called the Nick Bare Podcast. And the book Go One More comes out, like you said, tomorrow. And that can be ordered on Amazon or all major sites like Barnes & Noble, Target, wherever you buy your books.
Do you have an exercise that has brought you the sort of, some of the greatest growth, even if it's a simple body exercise? Is there something that you incorporated that really helped you besides running?
Besides running, the push-up?
Yeah, like just something that a push-up.
Yeah, I mean, I watched my dad when I was younger. Every morning, my brother would sit at the bar and eat breakfast. And my dad would do 100 push-ups while we were eating our cereal every morning. And he still does that to this day. Like when my dad comes and visits, he's in the kitchen every morning doing 100 push-ups. So I started doing that as I was in high school, and I watched him. And that just laid the foundation of consistency and discipline and bodybuilding and training and taking care of yourself. And that for me, like, push-ups is something that I do every day. And it's like a non-negotiable outside of running.
Well, Nick Bare, thank you. Congratulations. I know it's not easy. And I just really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
No, thank you, Gabby. I appreciate you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for spending some time with me. Hopefully you got something out of it. If you did, feel free to share it with your friends. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And also, I want to hear from you. Tell me what's working, what's resonating with you, and how you're getting it done. Keep going.